AskReddit by Lurker. Parents of Reddit, what is the creepiest thing your kid has ever said or done? Not a parent, but a sister. A couple years ago, me and my sister, me 11 and her 14, were watching my 4-year-old sister. She was always a little weird and said weird stuff but nothing too bad. Anyway, me and my sister were watching a movie and fell asleep by accident, and when my mom got home she started screaming and shaking us to wake up. When we were asleep my mom must have called checking in on us, and my little sister picked up and said I had to do it, mommy had to kill them. I cussed Sissy's throat and hung up. It still scares me sometimes. My cousin who is 3, he keeps referring to any woman he sees as tasty. We would be watching a movie and he would point out a woman and says she is tasty. What he means is that she is beautiful. I can't even walk with him outside because I am afraid he might point out to some woman and say that she is tasty. Currently imagining a 3-year-old saying every woman he sees is looking like a snack. My husband is a farmer. One night he asked me to pick him up after working ground and it was pretty late, around 10 o'clock. So I loaded our 2 girls up, then 4 and 2, and headed to the field. We get to the field and C is finishing up his last round, so we had to wait for a minute. I rolled the windows down in the van and shut the engine off. After a few minutes my 2-year-old says, "Mommy, who dat man outside?" I said, "I don't see a man. Is your Ken doll on the floor?" My 4-year-old then piped up, "He's right outside your door and staring at you. He's scary. He has blood on his face." That's when I turned the key, rolled the windows up, locked the doors and called my husband and told him to hurry the hell up because the girls are terrified and there's apparently a scary man outside my door that I can't see, but both girls are describing him and what he's doing. Thankfully C was done and heading up to the van at that moment and we left. My girls are now 5 and 7 and they both still remember that man and refuse to go to that particular field. I have to ask my mill to watch them when I need to pick their daddy up from there. My oldest daughter usually stands beside my bed at night. When she was 5 she already had long black hair. The creepy part was that she just stood there, not even tried to wake me or my wife up. She was just standing there for 2 or 3 hours watching us. When she finished looking at us she'd go back to her bed and sleep like nothing happens. That was a really creepy time of my life. Imagine waking up in the middle of the night cause of an urgent need to pee and looking directly at her eyes. My sister used to do this. She was naturally pale, had long white blonde, straight hair, parted in the middle and almost always wore a white cotton nightgown. She used to sleepwalk. One night she walked into mom and dad's room and just stood at the edge of the bed, staring. My dad woke up, freaked out and threw his pillow at her. She just turned around and went back to bed. I looked at the video monitor to make sure my 2-year-old daughter was finally asleep since she hadn't made noise in a while. I see her standing up in her crib. She slowly bends over to the side, cocks her head towards her knee, and says hi. How did she know I was looking at the monitor at that exact moment? Plus, the way she was bent at the waist looked humanly impossible. And the night vision function made her eyes look so creepy. Not a parent, but my cousin is. This was about last year. For Alan's sake I'll call him Dave. We were out on an all-day fishing trip and told me that if I wanted to spend the night at his place, I was more than welcome to. Not seeing him in a while and still wanting to shoot the sheet, I said sure. He lives in a rancher with his wife of 2 years and their 7-year-old son. He's a good part older than me. When we got back to his place, we had dinner, watched TV, normal things with nothing eventful happening. Eventually his wife and son went to bed, which left us alone in the living room. That's when I asked him, "You liking this place so far?" Mind you, the last time we saw each other, he was living in a different place at the time. He said yeah, but was making a face that you could tell he wanted to say more. He eventually followed up with, "Don't get me wrong. This place is great, but there's just something weird about it. I don't know what it is." Which I told him it's a new place and he probably hasn't gotten used to it quite yet. He agreed and we went back to watching some show when we could faintly hear his son talking. We just look at each other and dismiss it thinking he was talking in his sleep or something. An hour goes by and it's getting late. And Dave can still hear his son talking, so he decides to check on him as to why he is up. He enters his son's room with "Hey buddy, why are you?" This is followed up by him shuffling to pick up his son and carry him out, slamming on the door and waking his wife and sending us all out of the house. I'm obviously freaked. Dave is freaked. His wife, Jen, is groggy and confused, but their son is just poker face about the whole situation. No reaction. As soon as I know we're all out on the sidewalk in front of his house when he asks me to call the police, I oblige, not even thinking if it was a prank. And wait, I ask him what happened. Man, took him a while to gather a response. Then he looked at me with the weirdest facial expression and said he was on his bed sitting up talking towards the closet. When I looked over to see what was in there, I saw an old man, and I swear to God, man, he was smiling at me. He was tearing up as he was telling me this. Police arrive. They check the house. No sign of entry at all. Everything except the front door is locked. When everything was said and done, Dave made everyone sleep out in the living room at night. I went home, and 4 months after that night, they moved. I see him even more since he ended up moving closer to me. I asked him if he moved because of the man he saw, and he'll just shrug it off, almost like he saw him again. Either way, something happened that night. Now his son plays Fortnite, so you decide what's creepier. My 7-year-old told me that his old family died in a fire with him and now he has a new family, ours. He told me the names of his siblings and what his parents looked like, what house looked like when he died. So much detail. I wrote it all down as he talked, and after he went to bed, I looked it up. Everything he said matched this one old news story. Everything he said fit. This news story I never even heard before, and it was about 1.5 years before he was ever conceived. We've always been careful about not watching anything scary or reading scary books, but as soon as she was old enough to really talk, about 2.5, she told us randomly one day, "I used to live in a different house with a mommy and a brother named John. I was older than I am now. One day I was on the bridge looking into the water when a witch came up and scratched out my eyes. I fell in the water and drowned, and then I came to you. I don't believe in past lives or anything, and I know kids are just highly suggestible, but that gave me the damn creeps." About 8 years ago, my daughter, who was 5 at the time, woke up in the middle of the night, crying and yelling, almost screaming, around 3 AM. I went in, bleary-eyed, and sat on the side of her bed. My daughter is an eloquent and linguistically advanced little thing, but she was pretty much reduced to a blubbering, quivering mass of terror. She was clearly horrified by something, and just put her head down on my leg and sobbed. She did so for several minutes, with me just patting her back and holding her. When she eventually calmed down, I asked her if she had a bad dream. She told me that she didn't think that she had been dreaming, but that there had been someone looking in her window, and it had really frightened her. I got a little spark of anger. We had had some teenagers messing around in our backyard a few times at night, and if they had worked up the balls to climb the wall and look in, that was bad. My daughter's window is about 9 feet off the ground, and it's a sheer brick wall leading up to it, but you can climb it with a bit of effort. A run and then a grab on the bottom of the window will get you started. I thought that I had frightened off this group of teenagers by stepping out on the back porch with a large gurkha knife a few weeks before, but apparently I had not. She went on, dispelling my assumption. "Daddy, it wasn't those boys. He was just standing on the ground, looking in. As I mentioned, her window is 9 feet off the ground, and there was something wrong with his hands. His hands were really..." She paused, looking for a word. Then she frowned and started crying again. Long and strange. She cried hard again for a second, then kind of stuttered out, "His face was long and wrong too." I held up my hand and asked if the long hands were like mine. She said no, and put her one hand on the base of my hand, and the other about 3 or 4 inches from the tips of my fingers. "This long," she said, "but not as wide." "Daddy, I'm scared." So to recap, my daughter woke me up by screaming and crying, then informed that she saw Fing Slenderman in the backyard, and that she was scared and he was strange and long. I was sleepy, and had suddenly become convinced that there was a monster in the backyard. It's a lot easier to believe in things at 3 AM. So I did the hardest thing I've ever had to do as a dad. I smiled and said, "Kiddo, I think it was all a dream. I will look in the backyard though, okay?" Internal voice. This is how horror movies start. Don't do it. She said, "Okay," because there's nothing bigger or stronger than daddy. She actually managed to smile at me and laid back down in her bed, secure in the knowledge that everything was fine. I got out the same huge gurkha knife and went to the kitchen, which is an exit onto the back porch. I turned on the backlights. In the backyard there was nothing. Nothing was there, because it was all just a dream. She had a creepy, distressing dream, and she has a gift with language, and she made me think that it was real, and it scared the bejesus out of me. I went back to her room and told her that everything was okay and that I would keep her safe. I held her until she slept, and then I went back to bed. I lay awake, staring at the window until my other daughter woke up at 6 for the morning. Thanks for watching. I know you fearless mad lads weren't the least bit spooked. Hit that like button and subscribe for more content. While you're here, check out some of these other videos. Have a great day.